You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Today, I donate my 5 minutes take to my discussants because I was writing on the subject that they are going to discuss, and by my principle, I will not be able to do that. Yes, so on the matters of the threats to democracy, anything I have written could go into my questions to my guests on why the alarm bells at this particular time. We have heard from Francis Spoku speaking at that event. We've also heard from Professor Jan Bafor Ajmandia. All of them are worried. And before now, they have been worried. Many civil society leaders have been worried about democracy and the fact that it's not producing its dividends, particularly in Africa. It's getting terrible. The leaders are acting as if they can't take the right decisions. They are getting richer, the people are getting poorer, and the nations are getting poorer, which nations are richer. So, why the alarm bells now? And Afenyo Markin joins the discussion by urging his colleague politicians to be careful. Right. So let's begin by checking how arrogant is Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh and why arrogance must disqualify him from being a vice presidential candidate. Clearly, it will not disqualify him, but why will that make it difficult for him for the NPP to win the 2024 elections? That's the question. You must be a stranger in Jerusalem if you do not know that on the lips of almost everyone who has something to say about this particular energy minister, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh, apart from his own party people speaking publicly, the refrain is he is arrogant. And some people even associated with the party somewhat are making posts suggesting that he's arrogant by birth, naturally arrogant. But some are also asking the question, you've been voting for humility. What did you get from that? Let's begin by hearing and feeling what President Akufo-Addo felt in the course of the week. He said the NPP has an excellent ticket and we are going to win with this ticket on 7th December 2024. That's the news. The feeling is good. They make a very good pair and they are going to win. Let's get a feel and get to the studio to discuss the issues.
Yani pepe fia ya tete no ma no nyini ha ni school kom ni bribia peja film no tia kwapem se nyame boaye o graduating in school bribia bani doctorate degree.
The Apetefie is his father's home, where he was born and lived throughout his days in basic school to the university, even before moving to study abroad. He has been a calm and humble child since childhood. He was focused on school and studies. He has always been indoors studying, and he took everything seriously.
What Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh brings to the NPP presidential ticket, I would say, it brings to us a bold, confident, hard-working, result-driven, decisive, grassroots mobilizer, charismatic, patriotic, and demonstrable, incorruptible person. That simplifies who Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh is. In fact, he's a leader with a clear track record of achievement, and he shares Dr. Muhammadu Bawumia's vision of bold solutions for our country that are responsive to the needs, opportunities, and challenges of the 21st century. In this respect, he complements our flag bearer in many significant ways, and the two enjoy a warm personal relationship anchored in deep mutual respect. More importantly, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh has a great working relationship with our presidential candidate, His Excellency Dr. Alhaji Muhammadu Bawumia. The synergy between these two great leaders on our presidential ticket, coupled with their proven track record and transformational campaign message, will help the new Patriotic Party to secure a resounding third conservative electoral victory on December 7, 2024. Inshallah, by the grace of God, it is.
Launching of him after he's been presented, and we have our team to contest for the next election and to show the NDC who they really are, and the fact that they should go back and sit in opposition for the next generation. That's an entirely different matter.
Breaking the age is assured.
If you ask me what this is about, what it's about is what I've told you.
Breaking the age is assured.
Breaking the age. Yeah. Watch the space.
Right. How should you watch the space?
Watch the space.
Papa Bawumia, and I who so be in vice. Eti the DNJ, ya do drive boat dome. I ain't na baha. Into if you are Orange Park.
As you can see, the whole country is happy, Ashanti is happy, and as a youth organizer for a neighboring constituency that's mentioned, we are very happy, and it's going to help us making the breaking the age very simple. That is why we are all happy. The market women are happy, the young ones are happy, because Dr. brings extraordinary performance on board. So no wonder Dr. Bawumia selected him, and you can see he's happy.
Well, I am very, very, very happy about this particular announcement. We, the Major South constituency, have been expectant of this particular information or this news. Yes, we have been from one stage to another as far as the appointment of Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh becoming the running mate of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is concerned. It has been a series of engagement from day one to today. And now, the National Executive Council, the National Executive have confirmed Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh as the running mate to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. We are very happy, as you can see, that everyone is in jubilation. And I think we are going to rally behind Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh to support Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia in breaking the age.
National Council has just endorsed the nomination of Matthew Opoku Prempeh to be the running mate to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. The MPP has an excellent ticket, and we're going to win with this ticket in 2024, 7th of December. That's the news. That's the news.
How's the feeling?
Feeling is good. The feeling is good. Well, they make a very good pair, and they're going to win.
Welcome back. This is Newsfile, the most authoritative news analysis platform. And so, in focus for this hour will be whether Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party, has made the choice that will help the NPP to secure the 8th, as they have been seeking to do, or this is a disaster. There's been a lot of discussion around him, but we decided to keep a little bit of a focus on the arrogance tag. Where is it coming from? And why must that matter if he is arrogant? My guests are seated, and we have a Japamesa who has worked with Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh as his deputy, joining us by Zoom. Good morning, and thank you for making the time to join us, Japamesa.
My pleasure. Good morning.
Great.
Good morning to your
Right. So the last time we hosted you on this show, about 2 weeks ago, you were very, you were uncertain, which I suggested to you that you knew the truth, but you didn't want to share it at the time, that it was Matthew Poku Prempeh. But you were upfront that he was the best candidate to have, right?
Yes, you're right. Indeed, I couldn't have been a mind reader at the time to know Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia was going to present.
And let me repeat what I told you. I didn't believe you then, and I don't believe you again that you didn't know.
Okay, so, but of course, I mean the signs were clear.
Right.
Clear,
right. So
let's think it was
right. Let me go to Dr. Arthur Kennedy, physician, political activist, and chair, MPP Communications Committee 2008 campaign, the presidential candidate of the NPP that the country never had, the potential president that the country never had, the man who was adjudged to have had the most ideas and the best ideas, but without a deep pocket to support, for which reason he got a single vote, confirming the fact that the delegates are a sellout. You must have money, else you won't win in party primaries. Dr. Arthur Kennedy, thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning to you all, and good morning to your listeners.
Great to have you. And also because of your article about the judiciary, we are happy to have you this morning as well. Here in the studio, my good friend, I call him the rebel, Kofi Bento. Rebel in the sense of the ideas that he churns out, the novel ideas, the solutions that he's able to bring on his feet in a room of many people trying to brainstorm. He will quickly do a PowerPoint of the ideas in a way you will love it. Kofi Bento is lawyer and senior vice president, Imani Africa. Kweku George Ricketts Hagan, MP, Cape Coast South, and former deputy minister for finance. Gentlemen, thank you for making time to join us.
Thank you.
You have been away for a while.
Yeah,
we missed you. Okay, right. So, let's start with you, Kofi.
Right.
This is Matthew Poku Prempeh.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say? Bawumia made a wrong choice?
One, the choice is for Mr. Bawumia. It can't be wrong if it is his choice. So let that be clear. And then two is whether we like the choice or not is irrelevant. The issue, therefore, should be whether, in the scheme of things, politics is strategy, it is calculation. So it is not about whether even he likes him or not. It is about whether, in the calculation, he made the right choice to achieve his goal. I think he hit it spot on. Everybody can talk. Have you ever come across a choice like this, which people didn't have anything to say about? So everybody can talk, and the irony is that the people who he's campaigning against are the ones trying to advise him. As in, they are saying, oh, this man is not good for you, you should have picked the other person. In other words, if you pick this man, then you are going to lose. So pick the other person so you can win against us. Clearly doesn't, wash. So let those fundamentals be clear. Then you have what is being said everywhere. Napo is arrogant. You know something? I think that's not so much a negative. If you have a person like Napo who has been in the limelight, in the politics of Bantama and MPP, been at the forefront for decades, been in some of the most controversial ministries, education, recently energy, and when he is elevated to the highest political position he's ever occupied, all people have to say about him is that he's arrogant. Maybe you will see the positive I'm talking about.
They say more, but the arrogance tag resonates.
That's the point.
Which I suppose you agree with me.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Hold on. Look, in Ghana, arrogance is a term of art. It does not mean what it means in the dictionary. In Ghana, arrogant also means too known. You heard that before?
Yep.
Those of us who work in think tanks, who do analysis, who talk on radio, we hear that every day. In Ghana, arrogant means you are articulate. You know how to string your thoughts. You know how to make an argument. That's what arrogant means. In Ghana, arrogant means you're assertive. It means you know what you want and you push for it and you insist on it. In Ghana, they'll call you arrogant, they'll call you too low. In Ghana, arrogant means you are analytical. Instead of saying, well, it is this, everybody says it is this, then you are saying, why should it be this? Why can't you consider this and this other option? Immediately you go into analysis, you are too known, you are arrogant. In Ghana, arrogant could even mean you are well organized. Your things are properly put, you are organized, you move steadfastly, you calculate. You are too known. You are arrogant. So in Ghana, arrogance means so many things. Then there's another thing about Ghana. And I'm Ghanaian, I haven't lived anywhere else. In Ghana, we excuse ignorance. Okay? What I mean is, we don't celebrate excellence as much as we excuse ignorance. Look, a lot of our comedy, okay, is built on exhibiting cluelessness. People mistaking things and then we laugh. We are very jocular, okay, about those things. And sometimes it tells you why we are where we are, why we have open drains, and why certain things that should not be are. We tolerate them.
Elsewhere, the people you call the comedians are perhaps the most intelligent.
Elsewhere, they are the sharpest, the smartest people are the people in comedy.
Yeah.
Over here, and look, I don't mean the comedians here are not smart. They're actually very smart too. But over here, you realize that even the smart comedians have to dumb down, okay, to exhibiting ignorance. And you know what I'm saying? I'm being careful not to sound insulting, but I'm making a point that if somebody calls you arrogant in Ghana, don't get too offended. Just check yourself. Just check yourself. So what we need to appreciate is that for a man like Napo, the question should be not what you have against him, but who is your alternative? Politics is almost all the time a suboptimal choice.
Right. Let me ask a follow-up question on how you have presented very beautifully the issue of arrogance from a certain dimension. And would you say that that attitude of describing a particular people as arrogant is not only with the man on the street, but even with the middle class, even with, call them the people in academia, even lawyers?
Every one of us, look, it runs through our society. There's a certain level of intolerance, okay, for analysis and meticulousness. I know because I work in a think tank. People want things quickly. Oh, please, you're book long, you're talking too much. All these things, let us see what
is something to say about everything and anything.
Oh, look, so we need to face up to some of these things. We really need to face up. We like copying things, okay? We don't like sitting and analyzing, why did they do it? Why this, why that, why that? So, and it runs through. Look, a lot of times you see policies put out. You see things, pushed out. And you ask yourself, I always ask, where is the policy brief on this? In other places, the ideas start, people write papers, they are compressed, somebody edits them, and then it goes into another place where they draw out a policy brief. They give pros and cons. They do analysis, financial analysis, impact analysis, before things are put out. So when you see something being put out, it's been processed over time. Over here, boom, and we are gone. One of my interactions with Napo, and I'm saying this to show that I'm not about it, was about free SHS. When free SHS came out, we took it to task. We, analyzed, and we said, it's a great idea. We want free education, but if you go this way, Napo was one of the people who resisted us. And I'm saying this because I have also come across what people say is arrogant about Napo. Okay, I remember, I won't go into the details, but he just dismissed us. You people, you are always complaining about everything, that kind of thing. So I have my beef about Napo. But let me tell you something. Napo executed free SHS to a T. To the point where what we said was going to be a problem, review it, needs testing, the things we're saying and we're told were too known, let everybody, is what we are discussing today. It is Napo who executed it. From a certain point of view as a strategy person, I respect Napo for his ability to execute, even in this environment. That is why he's called arrogant.
Do you realize that, or do you admit or accept that the arrogance tag, if Napo is cast in the mold of Akufo-Addo, that what is perceived as arrogance is not exactly arrogance, but it is what you stated first, the first category. People who know their stuff, people who are assertive. That's how most of us growing up and knowing the Akufo-Addo and studying law, and law students wanting to imitate him, including how he keeps his handkerchief. People said he was arrogant, arrogant, arrogant. Do you accept that that tag affected his attempt to be president?
Yes, I do.
For all the times he failed?
I do, because one of the things about Ghana is that we like nice people, even if they are not effective. Across our history, I won't go too much. So yes, that affected it. But again, he managed to push through it. So I always tell people that Nana Akufo-Addo convinced us that he was the best president we had never had. As for how the performance went, that's another matter. But it was a tag. Maybe he earned it because of all those things, styles and things. Maybe he earned it. But you see, I don't think that should stop anybody from really achieving what you have to achieve, which is where I also think Napo's effectiveness comes in. Look, success is the best revenge. And I've explained why people call people arrogant in this country. But in the Ministry of Energy, until recently, the lights had stayed on. And even recently, I took a lot of heat by saying this is not Dumsor, because I know what Dumsor is. What we got is bad, okay? But it was not the same. And I'm saying that, given where he has served, Napo should have far more things coming at him of substance than just arrogance. So that tells me that there's something positive about the man. It also shows that the person who picked him is not just listening to voices. He did his analysis and has come to the conclusion I've come to, that show me your alternative to Napo. And if you show me your alternative to Napo, then we can discuss who is arrogant, who is effective, who is a better choice. Because politics is almost always a suboptimal choice. You don't get what you want.
I will shortly play one video of him reacting to a journalist asking him a question, and ask you if you will advise him not to respond in that manner.
I will, yes.
And that appears to be his posture. And people see that and they say, that's what we mean when we say he's arrogant.
Yes.
And there are those who suggest they have gotten a bit closer, and they also still say, look, that guy is, arrogance is in his blood. I'll play that to you and have you share that with me.
I will, but let's play it.
And then tell me whether you think it is justified. Those who say he's arrogant, they are justified. But before we get that and get your response, again, very deliberately, Ejapa Mensah, I'm coming to you. Knowing that the tag of arrogance affected Akufo-Addo's attempt to be president, should you not take any lessons from that? And I was telling you the last time we had this discussion here that I had the opportunity of being embedded with Akufo-Addo when he started his campaign. So I was on his team, going around the country. And I had the opportunity to interact with him at, close range, have interviews with him and speak with him. And I formed a different opinion. But when I dared to try to suggest that the person I have encountered is not what you are saying he is, I really suffered. Don't you think that you must listen?
Well, I listen by all means, but then again, you ought to be able to put out what you know about the person that clearly is inconsistent with the description of the negativity that is associated with the word arrogance. Because having worked with Dr. Matthew Poku Prempeh for 3.5 years, the tag, it's not the man. Indeed, Kofi has articulated extensively the attributes that he knows is associated with him that makes people feel within the context of the Ghanaian environment that he is arrogant. But far from that. But yes, I agree. The commentary needs to be confronted head on in terms of how you then let people get to know that, look, as has been said, when you are assertive in this country, then you're arrogant.
In fact, when you sit on the bus and the driver is misconducting himself and you dare suggest to the driver to be careful, you might get other passengers attack you and say,
well, that's expected, but that's precisely the reason why you have to speak, okay? Because, look, meaning of arrogance is an attitude of superiority manifested in an overbearing manner or in presumptions, claims, or assumptions.
Napo you work with him, he's not overbearing.
Members of parliament in the lounge and eats lunch. If he felt superior, I'm not sure he would do that. Napo is a man who has engagements on a constant basis, walks into my office. He calls me bro. If he was superior, he wouldn't do that. He comes to my office to have meetings. When I go to tell him that, look, people have come to engage with him, let them wait in the office, I'm going to come over. He walks there. You know, he sits with the Ministry of Energy staff where I work with him to have a regular stories. And I'm not so sure whether if you ask anybody who has worked with him at Ministry of Energy for the past 3.5 years, the attribution that he is arrogant would be what they would attribute to him. Far from that. I mean, he is, look, 2 days ago when he was announced, Joy FM interviewed me on I believe, Top Story. I was completely awash with emotion because I'd always hoped and prayed for him to be Dr. Bawumia's running mate. Because my first encounters with him, of course, I knew him as colleague members of parliament during the first term. Anytime that I needed to meet with him, I go to his office at 6 a.m. That's how early his day starts at the Ministry of Energy, Education at the time. And subsequently, when he came to the Ministry of Energy, we've had conversations, you know, on several issues. When His Excellency the President appointed me to be his deputy, he called me that, bro, President has told me that he's bringing you over to work with me. Come home and let's have a conversation. I went to his house. We had discussions deep into the night. Okay, he told me, frankly, that look, yes, he's human. Okay, all he wants is his work done. And so when he gets into the mode where he's exacting some deliverables from you and you don't deliver, he will scold you. And indeed, and in fact, during the course of the period that I've worked with him, he scolded me on a few occasions because his expectation had not been met. He is not the one who is going to sit for a deputy minister to delay him meeting a certain trend line or anything like that. So if that's what people describe him as arrogant, then I suggest that maybe Kofi Bentel's positive trait is what we all should aspire.
Would you say then that he is like your bit of a Trump, of a character?
I don't think so.
Where I have hosted Napo on my show here, and I can tell you that he's difficult. I mean, when I say difficult, I don't mean arrogance.
It's not a pushover,
he says, yes, you can't try it.
You can't.
He will insist on a point, and even if you want to stop him, and for as long as he hasn't made a point, he will not stop. So my thing is that what you see him to be, for which people then say he's arrogant, instead of saying he's assertive, he's blunt, he's not diplomatic about what he has to say, so that he says, well, you say the people in Keta, what has happened to them? You are going to budget for them to take care of their circumstances because of a certain situation. If you did that, I will not allow it. He says in Parliament, somebody angers him, then you see him throwing his hands, in the air and using almost practically violent language and showing by body as well. A journalist approaches him. It's Dumso. What do you have to say? some years ago, you joined Kofi Bentel out there and you were demonstrating that, Dumsor must stop. Here you are today, the lights are erratic and so on. His reply gives many people in the country, chills. Why does a minister speak like that? Just give the journalist an answer. Why do you say anybody who says there's Dumsor, let them bring their own timetable?
You see, Samson, it's unfortunate how this particular incident has been twisted to achieve a certain end. Because if you listen to the longer version of the tape, you hear him clearly indicate to the journalist that there's no Dumsor. And so there's no need for us to provide a timetable. That indeed, if there was the need for a timetable, he is not afraid to put out a timetable. After all, when we came into government, when he was energy minister in 2021, we put out a Dumsor timetable. When Gridco was doing its stringing of wires in the Eastern Corridor, we did. And he termed it Dumsor, if you recall. And so it's not as if to say he's scared of putting out a timetable for Dumsor when there's one. We went to the Parliamentary Select Committee and he showed them the daily PURC monitoring of the power grid. It was such that today you had 200 megawatts shortage, tomorrow you had 0, the next day you had 100, the following day you had 150, the next day you had 0. So that situation in itself was not one that could lend itself for you providing a timetable. All that explanation had been given. So if you insist that people say that give me timetable, when he's not in a position to give you timetable, then the response that he gave is what he gave. But we take that out and only make that statement that if you want to do so, then bring your own timetable. Suggest that there was no context at all. That's, I think, very, very, very unfair on the interviewer. If that's, well, maybe for political expediency, people have cut their clip as they do on most occasions to put that out there to suggest that he had given a statement or a response.
All right. Anyway, from the interview that I have been privy to in respect of that issue, I don't think anybody has twisted anything or done anything wrong. But what do you say about and we have to be careful not to make it about these comments. But what do you say about the Keta, infamous Keta comment, for which people are saying he cannot even campaign in Keta if
why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Samson, every constituency has needs. Every constituency MP advocates for their needs. When the budget is prepared and presented to Parliament, it would have considered all the needs that have come and the availability of the resources to meet those needs. So if a member of Parliament from an area that has been affected by tidal waves, and indeed that very occasion, the tidal waves spread across the entirety of the coastal areas of Ghana, including Shaman and other places in the Western region. So if a member of Parliament from Keta says that condition, if you don't include a provision in Keta in the budget, then we are not going to support the budget. Is it not entitled to say that in that case, he would also make a case for Meshia, constituency or any other constituencies need to be captured? Is that how to govern a country?
But that's not what he said.
But that's exactly what he said.
The problem about what he said was what he meant. He said he would do a demonstration against the minister if he provided for Keta.
Because of the condition that have been attached to that request. Then every other constituency's needs ought to be captured.
Okay. So will you say as one professor, as one university professor has said, that you must make sure he doesn't speak unscripted. So the problem is his speaking, is it?
Napo speaks unscripted on many occasions. Many occasions. In fact, he hardly reads his speech. Okay, or all of it. And so really, I really don't think that this talk about he being arrogant is borne out by the person that I have come to know over the years. Many people who know me. Indeed, Samson, you see, you are showing clips of a man who is serving the golden stool. You listened, you played the audio from the old man from Apejavie and his description of Napo. These are people who know him better than you and I. And I am clear in my mind that the arrogance tag obviously is going to be played up by political opponents who would wish that they, like they did to Nana Addo in the past, will get some traction out of it for their political benefit. But we are here, and then we'll defend that.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. I'm talking to a friend of Napo. I'm talking to someone who has served under him as a deputy minister, someone who's been in parliament with him, has been in the party with him, as he says. And you find that even the statements that I use as an example about how he has reacted to certain things, he attempts to refine them and not repeat them in the manner Napo, would have done. Do you also sincerely believe that this sort of overwhelming public criticism that he's arrogant is factual and must be a major consideration, which has been overlooked by Dr. Bawumia in picking him?
Samson, this is an interesting point, but to go back a little bit, there is a point that affects some of the commentary that we've heard about Napo, as well as what you said about me regarding money. Some of the comments that we've heard about him is that, he's generous. And I recall that Bill Clinton once said, money is the mother's milk of politics. Let me begin by congratulating Napo on his nomination as running mate. It is a good thing that has happened to him. We should all wish him well. But having said that, I am troubled by what I have heard from the two gentlemen who are trying to defend him, Mr. Mercer and Kofi Benzel. Napo's charge of arrogance has echoes in the past. I remember, and I'll come down to that when I get to data, that, like you pointed out, this tag has been applied to Nana Addo, but long before Nana Addo, in 1979, it was applied to Victor Usu, and it was applied in relation to the Volta region too. The reason why I'm troubled is that I would have expected that Mr. Mercer and then Kofi Benzel would indeed acknowledge what most people are saying. Napo shouldn't have made the remarks that he made, both in relation to the Dumso timetable and in relation to the Keita Sea Defense Project. I am very sure that knowing Napo, and I've interacted with him a little bit, in his quiet moments, he would wish he had those words back. Those who want to support him must not try and pretend that those who are making these charges are ignorant. We are all complex people, and we all have faults. Those are some of the faults of Napo, but he does also have strengths. I think that those who seek and promote him will do very well, not just to tell us about his strengths, but to acknowledge that some of these things that he said and done, they were not done the best way possible, and that they would counsel him to do better. President comes from Apejafie. He was even president, and he served in government for longer. I never recall anybody describing President Kufuor as arrogant. So those who do support Napo and wish him well, I think should give him honest perspective so that as a person he can grow. I do not think that when you go and tell people to go and bring their own timetable, it is because of competence. Or when you say you demonstrate against the people of Keita and Manshia, that is because you know what you are talking about. those things are false. And it gives me unpleasant echoes of listening to people here talk about Donald Trump when they like him. They seem to gloss over all his faults. You can see his arrogance and bad manners clearly in front of you, and they'll be swearing that none of those things are true. So I think that the question of arrogance, for example, when you compare Napo to, say, President Kufuor, the contrast is very clear. But I think none of us is perfect. So those who want to defend him must not just defend him in public, they must counsel him in private and hope that he can grow. But I plead that none of us is perfect, and we'll never, like Kofi Benzo said, find a perfect person. So
how much consideration should we have to temperament when it comes to looking for the first and second gentleman or lady, so to speak? Remember also that not too long ago, when the NPP went into its primaries, one of the things that were effectively used against Kennedy Japan, which many of us without any equivocation support, is that he doesn't have the temperament to be a president of this country. He's easily angered, he throws tantrums, he speaks about blackmailing. If he wants something he doesn't get, he gets on the radio and he starts insulting everybody and so on. So the same people who were against one of their own on the question of temperament can't seem to admit that Napo has an issue with his temperament. Even if he doesn't, that there's such an overwhelming, number of people in the country who think that is who he is, and a bit of an admission, and as you have just counseled, will be useful. What role should temperament play in deciding who becomes president or vice president?
It should play a big role, and I believe that, of course, arrogance or losing your head is situational. So yes, it matters. And I wouldn't go as far as Mr. Bento to call what is obviously a flaw a strength. It is not a strength. But having said that, Napo have strengths. Like the deputy minister has pointed out, yes, he's hardworking. I disagreed with how free SHS was implemented, but I think that he worked very hard in trying to implement it, and on balance, he's been one of the best ministers of Nana Akufo-Addo, who, by the way, I am told had other candidates that they prefer. And talking about the arrogance that you talk about relating to Kennedy Japan, this search for running mate and even before them for presidential candidate has had hypocrisy and inconsistency written all over it. I mean, there were a lot of people from Ashanti who didn't think an Ashanti deserved to be the presidential candidate just because he was an Ashanti, aka Alan. And all of a sudden, when it came to the search for running mate, they were insisting that an Ashanti deserved to be running mate. Try explaining to a simpleton like me why an Ashanti didn't deserve to be the presidential candidate, but he deserved to be a running mate. I still haven't been able to wrap my mind around it. But to come back to this, yes, indeed, temperament matters in being president and vice president. In even American history, there have been people who have bad temperaments who've been president, and sometimes it has worked. Andrew Jackson comes to mind, Donald Trump comes to mind. So I think, though, that those of us who watch politics hope that he grows. For example, a lot of people don't know, I worked with Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman when she was vice chancellor, and I was a physician in Cape Coast, and we had a famous clash that most people there know about. But I still think on balance, she's a very substantive person and that she will make an excellent vice president. So I do not think we should look for perfection. I just think that those who like Napo should not gloss over these weaknesses, because these are moments when maybe he can be cancelled. And by the way, I had the same view about Nana Akufo-Addo. I thought that a lot of people at least think he's a failed president and he's been arrogant and dictatorial in the MPP and is giving the MPP a bad name. Part of it is exactly what we are seeing today, that when he was a candidate and some of us were trying to shape his behavior and to counsel him about things that will lead him and his future government into trouble, there were a lot of sycophants who saw no faults. So I urge my friends to take on board what the public is saying. The public has wisdom.
All right.
And it all of us to be guided by the wisdom of the public.
Thank you very much. Now, Kofi, watch this.
For years. MPP administration, energy sector is 300 times better than Obama.
But we are still experiencing it, so.
Nobody has said we haven't. I'm just saying it's far much better than Obama ever did.
So you admit there is doom so in the country? You do admit that there's doom so?
That is the word you used. I have never used that word. I've promised you that we are going to work on it. And it's not a work that is a single event. It's a process. And we'll continue to work on it for the energy sector to become better.
Have you heard of calls for a timetable?
Ask those who want to bring it.
They should bring the timetable.
If there is, I haven't seen any timetable. So when you are saying bring a timetable, what do you mean? The ECG says that there's no timetable coming. Why do you want to bring a timetable? What purpose? Why would somebody get up and wish evil or bad for the country?
All right. And once again, to situate it properly, any suggestion that the public have not been given the benefit of the full length of this interview is inaccurate. This is the tape. And the first question about Dumso was put to him, and we all heard. His first response about the timetable. When the gentleman asked for a timetable, his first response to the question was, those who want it, they should bring it. So there is no further background to that. And let's note that we are not saying, there are several other comments he's made. People are playing videos where he's seen in Parliament, sitting just by Eslausu Ekofo and giving an impression of wanting to be violent and being sort of constrained. And then we also mentioned the matter of the Keta, where they suggest that he cannot go there to campaign, where he said, quote, if the finance minister dares put Keta flood victims in the budget, I will also lead demonstration against him because the people of Keta don't vote for the NPP, end quote. My question to you, Kofi, was, you clearly will not advise him to repeat these kinds of comments or speak in similar fashion?
Absolutely not. Contrary to what Dr. Atta Kennedy was saying, we are not excusing Napo's flaws. The nature of the discussion was, it went that way. But I even told you, we had our own problems at Imani with Napo. But I'm saying you don't judge a man just by the things that are negative. See, you need to be a certain type of person to be successful in Ghanaian politics. Napo is not. I talked about assertiveness. The other side of assertiveness is aggressiveness. You don't have to be aggressive, okay? I think that Napo has gotten to the point where his sins have caught up with him. And much as I say he's the best of the lot, it is not because I got up loving Napo. I told you our problems. But I'm telling you also that, but for Napo, we would have lost the Tamale refinery. I'm one of the people who is fighting to prevent the sale of the Tamale refinery to some people I believe are cronies. And it is Napo who has stood to back that effort quietly. I can go on and on and on. I don't want to create problems.
He needs the Gen Zs of Ghana to rise up and support him.
Well, if they don't, Napo is a one-man effective machine. So, short. These are the things that are wrong about Napo, which I don't advise him. But if he asks me, I say, boss, tone down this, because you need to be a particular type of person to succeed in Ghanaian politics. And some of those things Napo fails at. He fails at. But you see, here we are in this country today. And we are saying, we don't want some of the attitudes of this government. Governments that at the point we fought to come in, we have been objective not to say the government has failed, but there are individuals in the government who have done a good job. One of those individuals is Napo. And then we are saying, if this government is going to continue to break the eight, we don't want them bringing the old guard and the people who are... Napo is the one person in this government who will stand up against his colleagues if he believes they are going the wrong way.
Okay. What do you say to somebody who say, you stick out your neck for Dr. Bawumia, that is the best we can have in the circumstances? Yes. So you should not be heard to criticize his choice of a vice presidential candidate.
I am not criticizing his choice per se. I started by saying it is his prerogative. To that extent, he can't be wrong. But I'm saying no choice is perfect.
Right.
No person is perfect. If you want to criticize a choice that has to be made, then give me your alternative. And it's, look, I've said this when I was talking about Dr. Bawumia, don't compare him to the Almighty. Compare him to the alternative. Whoever you think is a better person to partner Vice President Bawumia, name the person. Then you will see the pluses and minuses come into contrast. So again, Napo is I have done the analysis personally. And Napo is the best of the lot. They all have positives. But look, I'm looking for somebody, one, who, although was part of this government, succeeded despite the mess. I'm looking for somebody, one, who, although was part of this government, stood up to some of the people that I consider were a problem in this government. I tell you, Napo was one of those people.
Okay.
I'm looking for somebody who is a Ghanaian politician and is a nice person, but also assertive. But in this case, I think Napo should just tone down a bit, because we Ghanaians, we like things in a certain way. That is why you and I will not succeed in Ghanaian politics.
Okay.
We have to be straightforward.
Right. Right. Now, see, the things Kofi talks about, there are some of it that some of us suffer. And I don't put myself in the class of the guys like the Bryce Simmons. Okay, I've gone elsewhere in the country, far away, millions of miles away, and Bryce Simmons' name has come up in meetings, you know, and I feel proud to be associated. But see how he gets attacked. And some say, you are too known. That's arrogant. I know many in your party don't exactly like somebody like Asa Nkrumah. Because these are brains. You can't run away from the fact that these are brains and you need them in your country. We don't know how to treat like our brainy kids. Oliver Bakavomawo, okay? Brainy kid. I use kid. We don't know how to treat them. He's organized a coup on Facebook. So his PhD has to suffer. He has to be going to court. I mean, wasting the guy's precious youth. So he's attacked. He's too known. That's what Kofi is telling you. Is it really about somebody being arrogant, or they are knowledgeable and we just simply hate knowledge? Sometimes they'll say, that's, to say it another, they say, you are Nigerian. It's assertive. Among lawyers, among judges, those who are assertive, who are achievers, very effective, they will hold you to the time, particularly some of the women judges. The lawyers don't like them. But we know that they are the ones being most effective. That's what he's talking about. What do you say?
Good morning, Samson. And good morning, Kofi. And our friends on Zoom. And good morning to your cherished viewers. First of all, this morning, arrogant is beginning to look like a good word.
Nobody said that. Nobody says that.
But, And I like, you know, the way Kofi, you know, described things that are perceived in this country, that someone is arrogant. Now, first of all, on Napo, as I know him, and he's been a friend. I mean, he's not a friend. I go and visit him more. We've been friends for the last 12 years, obviously in Parliament. So he's my parliamentary friend. One-on-one with Napo as a friend or somebody, you know, I've had a lot of intellectual, Napo likes intellectual discussions, by the way. And I think he went somewhere, I think, to my old school for some conference, and that's University of Chicago. And I don't know what he heard about me. So he came in and we started a lot of intellectual discussions, all that. One-on-one, he's a fantastic guy. Hardworking, as I have heard. But, you see, there are positive attributes that Kofi, you eloquently, you know, brought out about people that are perceived to be arrogant. But there are also negative attributes as well. Yeah. That when somebody says you are arrogant, it could also be, or it's perceived that you are not somebody who listens. And that is the troubling bit. Now, it must be a very difficult, painful choice. I mean, I wasn't there, but when I look at the scheme of things and who Napo is and all that, must have been a very, very painful choice by Dr. Bawumia to choose Napo as his running mate. Because, as we've just described here, Napo comes with excellent attributes, hard work, and this, that, all that.
And let's not run away from it. There are those who suggest that it's not a question of choice for Bawumia. His hands were tied to this. He had no option in the matter.
Well, I do agree. That's why I say it must be a painful one. Because I think the justification, and I'm not quite sure, Kofi, if, well, I don't know the lots. You probably have more information than I do. I don't know the lots that you are talking about that makes you think that Dr. Matthew Puku Prempeh is the best among the lot.
Who is your option?
Well, I wouldn't want to have an option.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't wish MPP well, so...
I know.
But by the way, I wish Napo well. Now, so when you obviously look at things, the justification for me, and he said his hands were tied, it's not what Napo brings to the table. I mean, in terms of his intellectual capacity and all that. It is not what Napo brings to the table, it's where Napo comes from.
I disagree with you.
And that is the Ashanti region.
I disagree with you, but it's your time.
And for me, that is what makes it a painful choice for Dr. Bawumia to... This is a guy who probably will bring something to the table, but his hands were tied because they felt that the Ashanti region could become a problem for the MPP, and for that reason, somebody like
strategic
Napo,
thinking.
Yes, Napo will take the. Could be strategic thinking can be painful. Mm-hmm. So
you see how difficult it can be. I can see how you appear to want to think deeply before you say what you want to say. We are in this country, Chachuchikata, for example. In the NDC, that's the figure of legal illumination. Many outside of the NDC agree with that. But the NPP largely will say that's an arrogant man. Right? I suppose Akufo-Addo would not say so. because he sat at the same bench with him, at the same bar with him to do cases together, and they know each other. That's the problem. You still don't agree?
But here is
that people may appear brash,
here is the thing,
provocative, but they are not exactly arrogant.
But Samson, hear this. You can actually be all the positive things, and I come to you, Kofi, not because I'm trying to pick on you. All the positive things that Kofi has said that is perceived in this country to be arrogance. You can actually be all those things without anyone also calling you arrogant.
You'll be superhuman to do that in this
because there are people.
Right, there are.
There are people.
There are.
Who, there may be few, but there are people. Now, what is my problem here is that when you are in public life, when you are a public servant, all these attributes need to be communicated in a way that portrays you as the servant of the people.
We learn.
When it doesn't come out that way, nobody wants, we are politicians, we are supposed to be servants of the people. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to be served by an arrogant person. You wouldn't get a house help or somebody who is an arrogant person to come and serve you. So that, for me, is the troubling bit about somebody being labeled as arrogant.
How would you explain
the
his
perception?
Serious popularity? He has some very strong following. How does an arrogant person garner that?
Well, you can be arrogant and have following.
Well, okay.
You can be arrogant and have following.
So let's conclude on this note. Yeah. Selon Brantier, Kofi Bentel's colleague in arms, he says, humility is the most sought after trait for Ghanaian leaders. Until they are elected. The humility, has it ever helped us?
Exactly. Well, Samson, humility probably hasn't helped us, but arrogance will not be the alternative. Arrogance will simply not be the alternative.
So you share the view that he will hurt the NPP's tickets?
Napo. You see, and then
on the point of arrogance.
Or humility all comes through communication. Look, my cousin Mesa said something about what Napo said about this energy, issue, and he put it so well. But what he said is exactly what Napo said, and it became a problem. That if you think there's doom, so do your timetable. This can be said in a way for a minister of state, a servant of the people, that will not have provoked.
I hear you. On what Salom said. On what Salom said.
Kofi, I don't want us to prolong this. We need to get to maybe perhaps more important
just one small
issues. Point. Kwame Esiedu Sapong, who was in school with Napo, says this. I have known Napo since infancy. We were in university primary. Together. Whilst in secondary school, I encountered him during vacation classes. Though he was ahead of me, we ended up in tech together. That's UST, KNUST. I was in tech when his issues in Unity Hall came up. Intellectually, he's robust and has been like that from our days in primary school. My views on Napo are this. He is forthright and often comes out as brash. He can rub people the wrong way, the wrong side, especially when he feels provoked. He has strong views and debates them fearlessly, sometimes to a fault. Overall, he is extremely hardworking. When it comes to the tag of arrogance, he fits the classic definition of Ghanaians. But is the Ghanaian definition consistent with the dictionary definition of the word? Is he perfect? No. There is something about the wisdom of crowds. The wise know that the crowd's view mustn't be disregarded. So for all of you who are playing the ostrich out there within the NPP, including those of you who say, oh, Samson has an agenda, so he set up to discuss arrogance about him. Check all your Twitter and your Facebook comments and media conversations since his name came up. the word arrogance has been associated with him. It's not about me.
The biggest.
Okay, so you conclude your point.
Yes,
Yeah.
I had a small point. I could just suggest it. One troubling thing for me, and I said, Napo is a friend. He is arrogant. And that is the perception. One thing that troubles me is by the time he made that comment on the energy thing that, he must have known that he's going to be the running mate. That's not too long ago. He either knew or he knew that he was being seriously considered.
And we're suffering under the erratic power.
Yes. Now, people can change their ways when they are looking for something or when they know they are going to get something. Napo is not that type. He was not troubled whether you're going to be a running mate or not. And that one will not prevent him from...
Okay.
And my advice to him is that he will need to tone down in terms of communication.
All right, just go quick.
On what Selom just wrote, what has humility done for us? Look, humility is a good virtue. But however, put in context, this is the point. Napo is too abrasive for Ghanaian politics. I think he must then take your advice and then tone down. Yeah. But what I was saying about the arrogance issue, some looking positive, is that we are not complaining about Napo's work for over 20 years. We are now just talking about his style, okay? And at this point in this country, are we looking for somebody who is effective or somebody who is just flowery? Like you're saying, even when Napo knew he was in contention for the vice presidency, his true nature came out. And I'm not excusing his true nature. But look, I want to see effectiveness. I want to see people who achieve things, who execute.
All right. Okay.
And then we'll advise them on how they conduct themselves.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, and then as you may have seen, we put up a comment including by Professor Ali Duseidu, head of Political Science, University of Ghana. He says, we have just 6 months to elections. Yes, you can convince the people, the MPP supporters, that this is not how Napo is, but we, the people outside MPP or even people within the MPP who haven't fraternized with him, how long will it take them to change their perception? And perception can be everything in politics. Thank you very much. We take a quick break. When we return, we will be asking, what is this sin that the Chief Justice has committed that Professor Kweku Azar, Dr. Arthur Kennedy on the Zoom with us, Kweku Ansari, former director of the Ghana School of Law, all angry and saying and joining the NDC, or the NDC rather joined, in saying that the CJ, together with the AG and the president, are acting together to make the judiciary an extension of the NPP. They are packing the judiciary. There are thoughts and preparations for this process that I've become privy to. I'll share some with you that may suggest that the criticisms may have been early and maybe unfair, even though they are genuine. We'll be right back.
Court has to, there are several cases pending, right? That's why we need more Supreme Court judges. Discussion must be placed in context.
It would have been very wonderful to see 3 chambers of the Supreme Court sitting at the same time. One in the old Supreme Court upstairs, and then perhaps
you should build a new Supreme Court building for the nation.
Right.
Or the Minister of Finance should.
The panel will be reconstituted. All rise.
Right, so we are moving on. Please stop sending more messages on Napo and the videos that I was just playing, a couple that you are sharing with me, including how Napo strongly took on the vice chancellors in a manner that some university dons have been very unhappy with him about the way he communicated. We end that discussion here, but let me conclude that with a message from Dr. Kwame Asante. He says that, for the records, arrogance, insolence, etc., have little or no place in the literature on voter choices But what really influences voter choices are the economy, infrastructure, development, fight against corruption, unemployment, energy, and education, among others. Let's focus on these and leave Napo's character to be managed by himself and his party. Okay. I get it. Thank you. So, as you may have followed in the course of the week, a letter written by the Chief Justice nominating Justice Efia Sewa Asare-Botwe, Justice Pamela Koranting, Justice Edward Amwakwa Sante, Justice Eric Che Bafo, and Justice Angelina Mensah Homia for consideration for appointment has attracted a lot of criticism. The NDC, at a press conference, stated, among others, that without any equivocation, they think that the Chief Justice's letter is illegal and has no effects. Her actions have completely turned due process on its head and compromised her independence as the head of the judiciary. You may have heard Godfrey Dame. He's come to say what he's aware of is the request from the CJ, and there is no malice in that. The judiciary is no doubt better placed to provide ample justification for an enhanced Supreme Court, but again, it is worthy to note that the Supreme Court of Ghana is quite unique. We have heard from Kwaku Ansah Asare, a former director of the Ghana School of Law, who is unhappy about the manner the process is being done. We've heard from Arthur Kennedy and also Stephen Kwaku Ansah, as in Kwaku Ansah, whose major issues include that the process of appointing justices of the Supreme Court is not for the Chief Justice to do, and that by doing so also seeks to influence the process in a manner that is not allowed by law. Professor Dr. Arthur Kennedy, why, in your view, this is so wrong? Because you actually support Kwaku Ansah's point.
I do. I crave your indulgence to return to Napo for just a moment. I think that we spent a bit too much time on his character, and I think there were more substantive things that we didn't interrogate.
Yeah, we focused the discussion. All other things everybody else is talking about, and there'll be a lot of conversations about him once he has been appointed. And we want to make progress because we actually wanted to deal with that in the first hour and then reserve the rest of the hours to the other, perhaps, in my view, more important issues.
I hear you, but give me just a minute and I'll address your substantive question to me. I think that the argument about where he comes from and what he can bring to the table from Ashanti region is a little misplaced. And as one of my professors says, in God we trust, all others bring data. I take you to 1950. And Nkrumah ran in Accra against a native of Accra and won big, leading to formation of the CPP government. 2004, when Kufuor soundly beat Atta Mills, a native of Central Region in Central Region, President Rawlings won the North decisively twice without having a Northerner on his ticket. And even in Ashanti, 79, with Victor Uso on the ticket, the second round, he only managed to get 57% of the votes in Ashanti region. So the idea that putting somebody from Ashanti on the ticket by itself is a guarantor of victory, particularly with Alan in the race, I think it's a little bit of pie in the sky. I will let your audience ponder those things. But now to come to the Chief Justice. A lot of people have talked to me about my interest in the judiciary and all that kind of thing. I have always been an admirer of the law. And those who went to secondary school with me will tell you that there is a famous story at Osechuchi about my English teacher, Mr. Okra, who has since passed, may he rest in peace, who even when he had made it to medical school said, I think he's a stupid boy. That boy will have made an excellent lawyer. I have always admired lawyers. And so whenever I engage the judiciary and the bar and others, I do that out of veneration. I am a keen student and I learn a lot from my friends. With Prempe, you, Samson, from Professor Azar, from Max Logan, and a few others whose names maybe there's no time to mention. And by the way, I do the same thing in medicine. I am a fairly good doctor, but I learn a lot, even now that I'm practicing from doctors that I know. When I was in Cape Coast, Professor Deborah, Harold Aite, Uku, Dr. Anthony, now Professor Jipon, Professor Frimpong Boatin, even my sons who are in medical school. Last week, they were having a discussion on neuroanatomy and I listened in admiration. So I come to my interest in the law with a lot of veneration and love. Now to come to what the Chief Justice is trying to do, I am very troubled, not by her motives. I don't know her motives. I'm sure she means well, but by her awareness of the political situation we are. We are a few months to an election. We've had a lot of problems with our judiciary and its reputation. A lot has been done that has left a lot of bitter taste in the mouths of a lot of Ghanaians. And we can recite some of the decisions. The election petition, in which they wouldn't put Jane Mensa on the dock to talk, the shocking change of EC members with the connivance of the Chief Justice and other members of the Supreme Court, removal of Auditor General Domilovo. The perception increasingly that our judiciary, and particularly the Supreme Court, is biased, with warnings from Kandapa, who, even though an MPP member, expressed the worry of many people. Since then, other people have weighed in, former President Mahama, Mr. Opoku, who used to be Kufuor's security minister. All those people have weighed in, and 6 months to an election, all of a sudden, we hear that in a country that has 15 Supreme Court justices for a population of 33 million, compared to 330 million Americans with only 9 Supreme Court justices. We need more of them, and the Chief Justice doesn't even bother to follow the process laid down by the Constitution. I smell a rat, and I smell a rat because it will contribute to instability in the country. I think that our judiciary needs significant reform, but those reforms needed do not include just adding to the numbers of Supreme Court justices. If the work is too much, the court, or for that matter, Parliament, more appropriately, should look at the U.S. Judiciary Act of 1787 and 89, which set out the parameters of the American judiciary. The first thing, for example, is that we should cap the number of Supreme Court justices. Second, we should define the appellate process, including the picking of panels for Supreme Court cases. We should bring more transparency. And by the way, our Parliament can do a lot of these things that have the Constitution is silent on, and it will bring a lot of stability to our judicial process. I am very worried about the reputation of our judiciary and where we are leading it, particularly in the teeth of an election that is only a few months down the line.
Right, so you just raised the comparison with the Supreme Court of the United States of America, which caps its judges to the apex court at 9. Now, there is a factor you will be urged to consider and see if the comparison is a good one. In the US, you have a federal system of government that is practiced. Each of the 50 states has a Supreme Court, with the exception of Oklahoma and Texas. These have the two Supreme Courts, one for civil and the other for criminal cases. So if you check properly, the total number of state Supreme Court judges throughout the United States of America is 344. What do you say to that? No,
what I say to that is that
and again, as you try to advocate, their jurisdiction is narrow. The Supreme Court of Ghana's jurisdiction is wide. I was trying to calculate with a friend of mine, Dennis J. Jumo, of Dennis Law, and we were counting as to about 9 different jurisdictions. Some people have counted 7, some have counted 8 jurisdictions, but in the pure sense, about 9 different jurisdictions. Elsewhere, they have just the appellate jurisdiction, and even that you have to come by leave. That means that not everything goes to the Supreme Court. Like in South Africa, they've also capped it, I think at 11 or so, but they have a constitutional court. And then they have the Supreme Court constitutional, they have the other one for appellate jurisdiction. So what will you say about that? In terms of the numbers, that was my first question.
Sure. There's an interesting question, but if you study the evolution of the American judicial system, it was not always like this. From the Judiciary Act of 1787 to be the Supreme Court judge to rise circuit, in which, apart from deciding Supreme Court cases, they served as judges who rode around deciding cases. So the system has evolved. And eventually, part of why their jurisdiction and their work load has become manageable is what you alluded to, granting certiorari. Granting cert means the Supreme Court doesn't have to take every case. For example, you need to obtain cert to have 4 of the 9 Supreme Court judges agree to hear a case. So every year they hear approximately about 70 cases that they think portray conflict from the appellate courts, or questions of original jurisdiction, things that are important in law. For example, this year they talked about the Chevron. Having said all that, I just say all this to say that there are ways that you can make our court system more efficient, and I've mentioned some of them. Clear and transparent appellate process, having timelines in the decision of cases, granting certiorari so that the court doesn't have to take all cases. So there are ways of dealing around that, but I take your point that there has to be some refinement. But having said that,
and you raise an important point that they sit at the beginning of the year to determine the number of cases they will do, and you say they will take 70 cases in all, for example. What will you say if you heard that our judiciary, our Supreme Court, in these years, in 2018 and the 2019 year, they were saddled with 761 cases. In the 2019-2020 year, they were saddled with 896 cases. In the 2020-2021 year, they had 906 cases to deal with. 2021-2022, 799, and then the very 2022 and this last year, 939. And in all these, they managed, out of the 761, they were able to conclude 559. Out of the 869, they managed to conclude 653. Out of the 906, they did 694. Out of the 799, they did 385. And then finally, out of the 993, they did 344 cases. And in all these situations, doing with less than 15 judges. In some situations, 12 judges. Only at one instance, they had 18 justices, which quickly reduced to 16 justices.
Samson, efficiency. First, if you look at prioritization, for example, regardless of whatever caseload you have, the Domilovo case should have been heard quicker. And I think the delay was not because of workload. It was because of judicial politics and the fact that there was an audit of the Supreme Court that had bad findings they didn't like. Secondly, the U.S. Supreme Court in Bush versus Gore decided that between the month between, say, December 7th and what do they call it, January 5th, when they had to go and do the ballot counting, they had decided it in a month. Look at how long it took us to decide the two presidential election cases. They went on interminably. So part of it is inefficiency. We can make these things more effective. If the U.S. can decide a presidential case in 2 weeks and Kenya can do that in relatively short term, I don't understand why we can take months and almost get into a year. That is inefficiency. So the other reforms would obviously speed up. And then the other things is also that we should allow more of those cases to be determined by courts that are lower than the Supreme Court. So having said that, yes, I get all the case laws and all that kind of thing. I'm talking about intent. And when I'm talking about intent, I'm also talking about reputation. That, for example, when you look at the U.S. Supreme Court, their reputation has changed. It's been low and up depending upon the nature of the cases they decide. You know, when you look, for example, at Dred Scott, you look at Plessy versus Ferguson, they were very badly decided cases. Then when you come to more good things like Brown versus Board of Education and others, then their reputation improves. So I am saying that it is an unfortunate time for the Supreme Court to make a case for more help because their reputation is getting down and the public is not supportive, even if some of the case they are making is valid. And part of it is from self-inflicted wounds. I think that it is very difficult, regardless of her motives, for anybody to look at what the Chief Justice is deciding to do 6 months to an election in the context of the warnings by Kandapar and John Mahama and not think that this is a blatant attempt to pack the court.
Okay. And I mean, listening to you and lawyers listening to you, they will endorse the facts that you narrated earlier about what your teacher said you should have been doing, because some of the cases that you know, it's only law students who are familiar with them. The Kofi, so I think Dr. Kennedy, first to you with this questioning about efficiency. We understand the conventional average that you have on the Supreme Court has been 15. In fact, in 2016, when the Ghana Bar Association took a suit to the Supreme Court, challenging how the president had gone about an appointment of judges, I think that was Sporman and Napo, there were issues. The Supreme Court in that decision actually has said that the court had never exceeded 14. I suppose that meant without the CJ. By the architecture of our Constitution, there are supposed to be 9 justices, CJ inclusive, a maximum of 10. But the court can do its business with 5, it can do with 7. There have been circumstances where there's a need to empanel 9. What do you say when you hear this? That conventional average of 15, only 2 panels of 5 and 7 justices or 9 justices can be constituted. this tends to exhaust the entire number of justices of the Supreme Court on a sitting day. So you have had the challenge of sometimes where you have recusal of justices. Maybe a judge has been involved in a matter before, so he comes to the Supreme Court. The judge was in the Court of Appeal and deal with the matter in a certain way, and then they have to recuse themselves. And the number continues to go down. And then there is a frequent situation where some of the judges, because they would have, like I just mentioned, dealt with these matters, they have to recuse themselves. And then also you have the ripple effects of the disruption of what we call pre-sitting conferences. The CJ has to constantly be reconstituting the panels because they are not getting the sufficient numbers to do what they have to do. So don't you think that it may be necessary for efficiency to have good numbers, to have at least 20, which is where, if these 5 are approved, we will get to. They will add to the 15 to make 20. If they add to that, then it means you can have at least 3 separate panels at any given time so they can deal with the cases. What do you say?
No, I don't. I'm unimpressed by that. Let me tell you why. The Chief Justice has sometimes moved judges around when cases have been heard and they are on the verge of delivering judgments, which have led to restarting the cases almost de novo. If he was trying to promote efficiency, he wouldn't do that. An example is the Commonwealth versus Legon case, where a judgment was about to come in a week and then she just reassigned the judge. If you were trying to promote efficiency, you wouldn't do that. I also think that when you talk about the 9 judges and then the Chief Justice, it is a flaw by the Constitution. It means that nobody knows the ceiling. I think that when you don't have a ceiling to the number of judges you have, there can be a lot of judicial opportunism. And we're about to see that. For example, when we nominate these judges, like the ones you have on the table, is it because they are the best judges around? Is it because they are loyal to somebody? Is it because they are somebody's friend?
My understanding to that question is that there are judges who have been identified as those that within the fraternity, the lawyers can confirm are judges who have speed in the way they do their things.
Yeah, but justice delayed is justice denied, but is speed always the best quality of a good judge? I have also heard judges who have different opinions about this one, but I'm just saying that these things require broad consensus within the legal community as well as within the political community. Appointing judges is a political process. As they say, a judge is a lawyer who happens to know the president, and we should also not be ignorant of charges that the courts are being packed. And it is very difficult to look at this situation objectively 6 months before an election and think that there are no political motives to this attempt to introduce more Supreme Court judges.
Please hold on there for me. Yes. Yes, conclude. I wanted to come to Rickett Hagan, and then we'll come to you finally later.
Sure. So I just think that the way this thing is being done, it lacks transparency. And as I have said repeatedly, we just don't have to focus on the Supreme Court. I think our whole system of justice needs radical reforms that will lay out clearly a time-dependent appellate process, transparent empaneling of panels, consistent panels that are not changed at the whims and caprices of the Chief Justice. I can tell you confidently there are Supreme Court judges who don't understand some of their motives for changing panels and are very unhappy.
Okay. So I wanted to bring Kofi or a lawyer in, but let me bring you in at this point. I shouldn't presume that you may not understand this thing. He just spoke about panels. If we can take it from there. And I asked the question, if improving the number from 15 to 20 is to get a situation where you can have 3 separate panels who will be there, and therefore the issue of having to change a panel member will not arise. And then he will get the efficiency he's looking for. And a group of judges who are said to be, efficient with a lot of speed as well are being appointed. Should we have a problem with that?
Thank you very much, Samson. I think, if you don't mind, I would also like to do what Doctor did, and going back on Napo issue. Just for 1 minute. Just for 1 minute, and I will, because he said something that where we have reached in terms of the climate that we are in as a country. What we're looking for going forward is leaders who will tell us the truth and leaders who will do that with humility. When you look on Napo and the Excellency Dr. Bawumia, you get one seen to be a liar, and you get the other seen to be arrogant. And arrogance and lies are not the kind of leadership that we're looking for going forward. We're looking for leaders who will tell us the truth and do it in humility. And that is not going to come from the ticket that we are looking at the moment. Now, on the issue of, as you rightly know, we had a press conference, and it's important that I address that.
Point 11 of your press conference, you said that the President, the Chief Justice, and the Attorney General, in agreement and in furtherance of the President's grand agenda to pack the courts and annex the judiciary as an extension of the new patriotic party. That's what they are doing. And you're saying there was an emergency Judicial Council meeting which was hurriedly convened on the 24th of June 2024 by the Chief Justice, who is also the chair of the Judicial Council. And you say, at the said meeting, the Chief Justice, who on the face of the record initiated the unsolicited request for the additional 5 justices to be appointed to the Supreme Court. You say they are in cahoots. Now you say she's taking a list that was unsolicited. I couldn't get that clearly, but I'm coming. Request for the additional 5 justices to be appointed to the Supreme Court, presented the Attorney General's letter of 21st June 2024 to make a case for the Judicial Council to the Judicial Council for these appointments. Interestingly, at that meeting, the Chief Justice remained completely silent about her own unconstitutional and self-serving requests to the President. The point is that they know from what they are saying that the process was initiated by a letter from the Chief Justice. But subsequently, there was also a letter from the Attorney General agreeing with this. And then she convened a Judicial Council meeting, at which meeting she used the alleged Attorney General's letter to begin to canvass the need for these judges while she shelved her own. But the point is, I think your accusation is that this is a grand agenda to pack the court.
Absolutely.
Including the fact that they are going to lose power and they are looking for judges who will help them.
I mean, clearly, from the league letter and all that, suggests that due process obviously wasn't followed. The lay down procedure or process is not a Chief Justice sending a letter to the President with people that he is recommending to be nominated. And it is clear from what we see at the moment that the courts or the judiciary is beginning to look like a puppet of the President. And that is of much concern to a young democracy.
The judiciary is beginning to look like?
It's looked like a puppet of the President. I mean, if you look at what is happening in the courts at the moment.
The judiciary. It's a big place, so.
Okay, let's stick to the courts.
Which of them?
Very big place too.
That might, you probably say that's a big place too. But basically, the point that we are trying to make here, and it's clearly in the thing.
This is about appointment to the Supreme Court.
Yes. Is that they are parking with people who are sympathetic to to the MPP. You know, obviously, it looks like they are going to lose the election, and they will lose the election. So they want to make sure that people are protected. And this is what we are trying to guard against. And that's what the press conference is basically about.
The question continues to be asked. When you go to the court and you win, that's fine. Once you lose, it's becoming a puppet of the president.
From what you are seeing,
and you can't point to what wrong the president has done. That in his tenure, by some call it luck, too many judges have had to retire, and he has the constitutional obligation, duty, to appoint to replace them. What has he done wrong in that?
Well, you look at the list, or you look at the appointment, and you look at people that have been basically bypassed. And you begin to ask yourself,
okay,
why has that been the case? So these are concerns, and they are not things we should brush under the carpet. Something is being orchestrated in terms of parking these courts with people who are sympathetic to the MPP. That is the fact.
Kofi, we'll come back to his point again. But Kofi, Dr. Atta Kennedy raised the point about Domilevo's suit, which took until he had left, and it's gone. How many years after? 2 years or so after he had left, he had been pushed away, for the Supreme Court to give a decision and to hold that the president's conduct was unconstitutional. I'm starting with you on that note because of the fact that you were a part of this process.
Yes.
As led by Martin Pebu, Isankoma, of course, CDD, the arrowhead in packaging the suit to the court. And you know, as a matter of fact, that the delay cannot be squarely blamed or laid at the feet of the Supreme Court, because amongst you, I'm one of you, and we discussed these things. There were delays that were occasioned by the lawyers.
Oh, on our side or on the AG side?
You know, I'm not going to say
so
it.
Let's not go into the detail, but on that issue, let us make this general point. I personally think that some of the cases in the Supreme Court do not get delayed as a reason of inefficiency, but as a reason of political calculation. It falls to the Supreme Court to disabuse our minds and to consistently act in ways that make us believe that if some of these delays happen, then indeed they were unavoidable. All that being said, look, people don't realize that there are thousands of cases that go to the Supreme Court, and a few that affect people. When it goes a certain way, then they are screaming and shouting. Let us get these things clearly. The judges are the supervisors of the realm, and that's a very onerous duty, a very powerful place. But somebody has to appoint them. And when he talks about packing the court, because this president is appointing people, there's a doctrine of necessity. He has to do it. When he does it, NDC says it's packing the court. But when you do it, NDC, when you are in power, then they also come and say it's packing the court. So let's get this straight. It is utterly distasteful when politicians are involved in the judiciary. Utterly distasteful.
I started with a direct question to you in a matter that you were involved in, which has been used as an example of the delay in the court.
And I said that I think that is a matter of political calculation, but I didn't want to be ad hominem about that.
You haven't answered that question. What does that mean, political calculation?
Because
Domilevo's
case was delayed,
so to speak, and then you filed a suit.
Yes, and it took over a year to hear the suit.
And who was the cause?
And I'm saying that with this huge judicial system, if you want me to go and detect who was the cause, what I can tell you is this. If we were a country and the judiciary were minded to hear that case within good time, it could have happened. So the decision not to hear it was not an accident that was unavoidable. It was a decision that was taken.
In the absence of a certain rule or regulation. For example, we did election petition for 8 months.
Yes.
Then we went to refine the rules. And the rules now say within 45 days, the case will be over. So there are specific timelines and dates that has to be followed. In the absence of that, in such a case, do you still put the blame squarely on the Supreme Court that the Domolevo case delayed?
I believe the Supreme Court can do far better than it did in a Domolevo.
But the lawyers had work to do, which they also defaulted on some occasions.
In the Supreme Court, sometimes the lawyers are instructed on this and that, and the cases are abridged and things move faster. So, see, my submission, maybe we'll deal with some of these things. We did a full program for this. And we'll be talking about...
I get that, Kofi. I needed it to be clear that whilst you did your part, and as Martin Pebu was leading the process, we saw how he got frustrated at certain points where he was looking for the court to issue a hearing notice for the matter to come on.
The system was frustrated.
It was not coming on.
Yes.
But for the period, there were times that you could say that there was a certain laxity on the part of those pursuing the case.
I don't want to go. Look, this is the conclusion. If you ask me, I'm telling you, that case did not have to be heard after all that time. It could have been heard earlier because it was time bound. Okay. Now, all that being said, there are issues with our Supreme Court. Again, comes to your point, which we can't blame on the judges. If you ask me, I think we need a bigger Supreme Court. Why? We copy too many things and we don't understand the history and the evolution that led to those things. Why would I want a bigger Supreme Court? I think we should have 3 panels in Accra alone and at least 1 panel in Kumasi. You know, we have
a Supreme Court panel.
I'm struggling to pack everything in. So what I mean is if we have more Supreme Court justices, you can have 3 different Supreme Courts sitting. In Ghana, we have only 1 High Court. You know that.
That's right.
Various divisions.
That's right.
I don't see why we limit ourselves to even the 15 when we have this load of cases. All right? So why don't we have a situation where in Accra, okay, we have 3 Supreme Courts sitting in Kumasi 1. Why don't we have specializations in the Supreme Court? All of them are Supreme Court justices. They can be empaneled. The empaneling system should not depend on one person. There should be an algorithm for empaneling. And there should be specialists. There should be specializations. We ought to have a constitutional case panel. We ought to have
so the present approach is going to 20 justices of the Supreme Court. And you are endorsing that?
No.
Because that will give you 3 panels.
No. What I'm saying is we need to go down to first principles and do some original thinking to redesign our Supreme Court to fit our needs. Comparing to the US Supreme Court is wrong. They cap the number at 9. They take only 70 cases a year. And like you said, there's a Supreme Court in every state. They've designed a system that fits and makes sense for them. If our Supreme Court justices can cap the number of cases, indeed, if we cap the number of Supreme Court justices, then we should cap the cases. But you see, that thing we do here, where every case can go to the Supreme Court, is a plus, it's not a minus. So if we're going to keep that, then why don't we expand the Supreme Court? Why don't we have more Supreme Court panels sitting? Why don't we have specializations? Why don't we have 1 in Kumasi? So look, I'm saying 1, we need original thinking here. 2, we need to rethink the process for empaneling judges and also appointing judges. First question, what wrong has the Chief Justice done in what he's done? Everybody is complaining about it. But
exactly. So let's get to that. That's the core point.
So I'm coming there. Now, is it that she broke any law? And by the way, in this discussion, sometimes we've lost the public because...
Have you seen the letter?
I haven't seen the original letter. I've seen, all kinds of...
Okay, so the letter is the letterhead Honorable Chief Justice, the one you are familiar with. Honorable Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana is dated the 30th of May, 2024. And, forgive me, and she writes, it's addressed to the President, and it's headed Proposal for Appointment of 5 Judges to the Supreme Court. And Arthur Kennedy and the rest take issue with this. First is a letterhead of the Chief Justice. It begins by, I write to respectfully request that the following judges be appointed to the Supreme Court of Ghana. Remember, it's I.
Yes. And on her letterhead.
Then, yes, so
don't belabor the point.
It concludes. Let me use it concludes in her own capacity and position.
Let me use the time.
Yes.
See, so we know what has happened. I think it is not The optics are wrong for she to be doing what she's done. But I ask myself, what law did she break? Hold on with me. See, the thing is, you have a Chief Justice. There's an appointment process where the Judicial Council advises on the advice of... Look, sometimes we make these rules and evolve conventions which essentially are an honor system. We expect people to be restrained in how they manage themselves there. We've gotten to a point where we cannot expect an honor system. So my issue is, maybe the Chief Justice shouldn't have done that. It is a bit too personal. I want to. No one person must have such a say in the appointment of judges, nor even in the empaneling. Hold on with me. So, if she hasn't broken any law, but then we realize that she can do a thing like this, which we all find distasteful and can argue against.
What do you know?
What do I know about what?
It's not an if. What do you know?
I'm struggling to find what law
is she permitted by law to do this? What's your answer?
No law, okay, has to permit her to do something. She is taking some latitude by virtue of...
What does the provision of the Constitution on the appointment of a judge to the Supreme Court say?
GB has a role, the Judicial Council, on the advice of the Judicial Council. Now, we have evolved some interpretations to the effect that the Judicial Council should develop the list. It is not written expressly anywhere. So I'm back to this point. We copied from here and here and here. Let us sit down, think through using first principles and decide what is the best approach for us. I think we must have a greater role for the Ghana Bar Association. Why? We work with them daily. There must be a greater role for the Judges Association.
Article 1442.
Samson,
we
don't have the time.
I need to read. We need the context. Article 1442. The other Supreme Court justices shall be appointed by the President acting on the advice of the Judicial Council.
Council, yes.
In consultation with the Council of State and with the approval of Parliament. The question people like Dr. Takanedi are asking, he says, while the CJ is the chair of the Judicial Council, her letter to the President does not mention the Judicial Council. Clearly then, this is not a communication on behalf of the Judicial Council.
Agreed.
What then was her motive? What were the criteria for those selected?
So, Samson, here's the thing. What stops the CJ as the head of the judiciary from making a suggestion to the President that, look, we are constrained over here. I run this system and I can see the issues. Here are my suggestions. Please, can you do something? What stops her in this scenario, okay, from doing that? And then the President goes through this process. What she's done, okay, does not stop the constitutional process from going through or being gone through. So my point is, if we don't want her to do that, let us be clear about that. But when you have a clear lacuna, as the head of the institution, somebody will say this is
you and I were in this country.
I don't like
you and I were in this country.
I don't like
when
it,
the Judicial Council, performing its obligations, generated a list for President Mahama to appoint as justices of the Supreme Court. And President Mahama picked from the list. Then the Ghana Bar Association, led by Nana Megache, who became Supreme Court judge, went to the Supreme Court and said President Mahama does not have that option to pick from the list and, in fact, decide to jump from maybe 1, 2 to the third or to the last person under. And the Supreme Court was unequivocal that the process must necessarily be at the initiation of the Judicial Council. Without the Judicial Council's advice on a list of people to be appointed, the President cannot be making appointments.
So something I'm still saying, I don't like this. But when the CJ writes to the President, it is not an initiation of the process. That can be argued. She's saying, look, we have a problem here. Can you consider these people? The President can totally ignore it. Or now the President or whoever has to, the Judicial Council now. If you ask me, I'd have said the CJ should have worked through the Judicial Council and gotten the process to work. But look, in this country, formally and informally, all kinds of whispers happen. People make suggestions, people make recommendations. Horse trading happens in the back. I'm back to my point. My point is, we need to rethink this whole process because it is more or less an honor system. And when you find somebody who will not
Dr. Kennedy, let's hear you. He has a quick rebuttal. Yes.
Kofi,
yes.
Why are you making life complicated for yourself? even I can understand 144.2, the Judicial Council. Why couldn't the CJ just call a meeting and say, guys, we have a problem, let's see how we can solve? If the CJ can follow these simple rules, particularly given the Supreme Court ruling we just referred to, is our judicial system in safe hands?
Doc, I actually agree with you that this was not right. But I keep asking the question, is there anything that stops her from doing that? And I'm saying there's nothing that stops her from doing that.
Okay.
Then what we should do is prevent this in future. But this was a suggestion.
Okay.
The Judicial Council can now...
Dr. Kennedy says the timing is wrong.
I agree.
You do?
Absolutely.
That because we have 6 months to elections, the needs of the Supreme Court should not be met.
No. You see, again, that is why it's not easy to run a country. Look, the Supreme Court clearly has needs. My problem is you don't wait 6 months to an election to do a thing like this.
If I told
why didn't we do this?
If I told
why didn't you use the proper...
If I told you
process?
that this process started in February, right? Started in February, the Ghana Bar Association's input was sought. They did not disagree. The Attorney General's input was sought. He did not disagree. And there was a proper brief of research work of many pages indicating the circumstances that the judges find themselves vis-a-vis the load that they are saddled with. And I shared some of the statistics with you. At a point, there were 12. At a point, there were 14. And even in that number, there will be circumstances, some will have to recuse themselves. There will be circumstances, some will just not be available because of certain situations. And there will be the need to reconstitute them. And people are not happy with the reconstitution, but they don't get to know why the panel is being reconstituted. So if you got to know that the panel, this process started in February, will you still say it's too late in the day?
I will say you need to appreciate the dynamics. You don't work in a vacuum. So you should have done it earlier and quicker. Indeed, I'm not defending the CJ. What I'm saying is that I think she has a certain right as the head of the judiciary to generate this list and make a suggestion. But I suggest that she doesn't do it because of these things. Now, if you were starting all that time, what was the Judicial Council doing? Why couldn't you work the system to get the process to work out?
So hold on, let me see if Ejapa Mensah will agree with you. On this very substantive point, in the face of Article 144, which is very clear that this must be generated by the Judicial Council, you still say the CJ can do this so motu. And I'm not suggesting that I know enough that the CJ generated this so motu. Yes, Ejapa Mensah, what do you say? Do you agree with Kofi on that score?
I don't. Because, you see, Samson, if you read the provision, say other Supreme Court justices shall be appointed by the president acting on the advice of the Judicial Council. So is it a suggestion that the president himself cannot generate a list for the Judicial Council's consideration and advice?
He's agreeing with
is
you,
it
actually.
That the Chief Justice cannot generate a list for the president to submit to the Judicial Council for consideration and advice? I do not think so. Now, if the Judicial Council then makes its advice known, then the decision that you mentioned in the case against Puaman and Co., that list cannot be tinkered by the president, then arises. Otherwise, I really don't see the big deal about all this duha. In any event,
let's be clear. The Supreme Court didn't say that the president cannot tinker with the list. Advice remains advice. If advice were compulsory, then they say it will not be advice. So the Supreme Court, what the Supreme Court was clear about is that, and it said it in these terms, what is clear is that all the authorities involved in the process for appointment of Supreme Court justices are bound in the exercise of their various powers by Articles 1284 and 926A and B of the Constitution. And to the point that they must do whatever they have to do, but at the end, it must follow from being recommendations of the Judicial Council.
Yes. So I'm saying that the fact that the Chief Justice has written doesn't mean that the processes that is outlined in Article 1442 cannot be complied with.
All right.
In any event, I hear talk about packing the court and all sorts of talk. Those are the politics, which is fine.
Entirely distasteful.
Because if there was some ill motive, why the Chief Justice couldn't have gone to sit in the President's office to have a discussion with him? Would she have written a letter that is in the public domain today? So what's the issue?
Do you share in the view of Arthur Kennedy? Do you share in the view of Arthur Kennedy that the letter emanating from the CJ and the context of it suggests it is the CJ's work and not the Judicial Council's work? You don't have any issue with that?
I'm saying that the suggestion from the Chief Justice is not conclusive of work having been done by anybody. If the President is minded to make a recommendation to the Judicial Council for them to consider, that process that is outlined in 1442 would be complied with. Not so. But you see, unfortunately,
let me understand you. Let me understand you. You are saying that when the CJ writes and says, "I'm proposing these people for your appointment,"
yes,
and then the conclusion says that they have distinguished themselves and so on. So this is the names I have submitted. You are saying that when the CJ is submitting, she is allowed in law to submit to the President, and that not having written for and on behalf of the Judicial Council is not an issue. The heading is proposal for appointment.
She's making a proposal.
Right.
Now, that proposal will have to have the input of not only the Judicial Council, but the Council of State.
Okay.
It is pursuant to the advice of the Judicial Council and the Council of State that the President can actually go ahead and submit the names of these people to Parliament through the Speaker for consideration.
So your explanation is that this letter is part of the commencement processes, which will ultimately end up at the Judicial Council.
Samson, it's not obvious. As far as my reading goes, it's so obvious that controversy that is generating is neither here nor there. But then again, of course, for the NDC folks, I do not have any issues with them, because that's exactly what I would expect them to do. Play the politics. But I haven't read fully Dr. Arthur Kennedy's piece. I've read only excerpts.
So
where he
so help me. Is it your expectation that Mesa, hold on. Is it your expectation that this letter is what the CJ wants to deal with, proposals? Then there will be another one from GBA. Then there will be another one from the Attorney General to coincide to go to the Judicial Council. Is that your expectation?
You provided some background.
Yeah.
I'm not privy to that. But my expectation would be that if the President is minded to look at the recommendation of the Chief Justice, he would then submit it to the Council, Judicial Council, which is composed of the Chief Justice, Attorney General, and representatives from the Judiciary, the Bar Association, and all that. They would then consider the request to determine whether indeed these people merit being considered for appointment.
In fact, the Attorney General, the Ghana Bar Association have all made their inputs on the list.
Already?
Yes.
It would be good for us to see those recommendations. But I'm saying that to the extent that the law is clear on who makes the recommendation for or advises the president for appointment, this process does not in any way, if you like, truncate that constitutional provision in Article 1442 at all.
Okay.
But I'm going to the
You do not also disagree with the timing of it?
I think it's first.
Did I lose you? The timing, okay.
My quick point, see,
I need to move on.
I know. See, what starts the process? So like you said, this is a suggestion by the CG. Other people could have made suggestions. In the US, they have the Federalist Council. They actually made the suggestions to the president. Then the process starts. So it is the president can ignore this letter and any other. But the president cannot ignore the suggestion or the recommendation coming from the judicial.
Does it matter that this president, you would have a judiciary, a Supreme Court that is constituted by persons, all of whom were appointed by this president?
It does. You see, the doctrine of necessity, which you and I understand, we don't have time to explain, makes that his prerogative. You see, in the US today, somebody had the opportunity to appoint 3 justices and has changed the course of history, settled law over 50 years. So the doctrine of this, like I said, it is entirely...
No, the question that is being raised is that, is this right?
So I'm saying, right or wrong, I don't like it. The timing is wrong and all that. So they who have the power must be minded. But if it falls to you, in fact, I don't like the long examples, but when President Trump came in, he appointed hundreds of judges. And they were saying that Obama could have appointed all those judges. He didn't do it. And so he did it. Now, people are complaining about it, but it fell to him to do it. When it falls to you, you have to consider so many things. Obama didn't do it because he thought, oh, why should I appoint all these things? That was an honor system. He didn't use the authority he had because he was thinking about broader things. The next person did not think the way he did.
Okay.
Which is why I'm saying, let us...
No, but I'm saying those are completely different situations.
You're asking whether it's right
they
for this
serve for
to
life.
appoint so much.
Supreme, US, they serve for life. And there are some there, and then someone comes to add on. Here, the question politically and sort of morally being asked is that you have a president who came into office and not by his fault. Many are retiring. So he has to replace them.
Necessity.
So you are at a point where the peak of the number, the unconventional ceiling of 15 are all his appointees. And then you want to add on to make 20. And it's 6 months to elections. And you say it's okay to have 5 more by the same person. That's the question people are asking.
And I disagree with the timing and how it looks, which is why I'm saying, even though it doesn't look right, there is no legal impediment. And where there's a necessity, it has to be done. So let us evolve, find a way to innovate a system that we can all live with, because we are risking this democracy with these things.
Okay. We lost him there. You want to make we want to move on to the next issues, but this is an issue that will clearly engage our attention in the coming week, because it is an issue that is still being debated. But we have seen a case that is being made that the numbers, there is a necessity for it, but it's the timing that people are seeking to question. As to whether there was a presentation at the Judicial Council and there was an objection by the council, we do not have those facts. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And my guest, Andrew Ejapa Mensah, MP Secondee and Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture. Kweku George Ricketts Hagan, MP Cape Coast South and former Deputy Minister for Finance. Kofi Bentil is lawyer and Senior Vice President, Imani Africa. Dr. Arthur Kobina Kennedy is physician, political activist, and Chair, MPP Communications Committee 2008 campaign. So there's a warning that important people are giving, or significant people are giving in the country at this moment. Let's listen to Francis Poku and Kwesi Enin and then Afenyo King, and come back to the table.
This is a test, and I believe we must all respond to this call. That if the face of democracy does not change after 2025, we are going to go through another history. And it must be a collaborative effort. Because I am telling you authoritatively, people are losing confidence in democracy. And there is a reaction, oh, good then, because you are for crying.
Quite a number of the oversight institutions have failed to deliver. And when Mr. Poku talks about the threats that we are facing, there are more internal threats than those that emanate from the outside. We don't want to talk about that because it's uncomfortable. We are increasingly seeing, and I like Mr. Poku's example of Ashama, in which Parliament was fantastically silent. But not only that, there have been lots of instances where Parliament ought to have spoken, but has not.
Right. I didn't hear Afenyo King, did I? Okay. Let's hear Afenyo King. It's important to hear him also because he also joined this discussion. Francis Poku and Professor Kwesienin, they were speaking at the Republic Day lecture organized by the One Ghana movement. Let's listen to Afenyo King.
The consequences may be dire for our stability. Throughout history, frustrations and disillusionment among the masses, including the youth, have led to significant social and political unrest. The recent Gen Z activism in Kenya serves as a striking warning. To prevent such scenarios in Ghana, it is imperative that the political class collaboratively take proactive and comprehensive measures to address the underlying causes of public discontent. Our preoccupation with political maneuvering should not blind us to the reality of public expectations. Let us all recommit to a national agenda that not only leverages the potential of our youth, but also unlocks the massive development potential often associated with the demographic dividend.
The majority leader raising the issue in Parliament after Francis Poku, former National Security Minister, and Professor Kwesienin raised it at the One Ghana movement Republic Day event organized together with the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College. So, Dr. Atta Kennedy, many are saying that if it is the Kenya situation that is being used to give these sort of warnings, Ghana has seen beyond the things that the youth in Kenya have literally forced the president to now admit to and is doing. Ghana has seen far beyond that. So that if you took the National Cathedral and what we are spending on it, if you took all the many issues that have come up and government's response, if a Kenya kind of protest would have happened, it would have happened long ago in Ghana. The issue about the first ladies and so on, it had to be settled in the court. In Kenya, the youth just forced the president to scrap the first ladies' offices and their salaries. If it has to be appointments in offices that have double deputies, triple deputies, and so on, or CEOs, they went to the street to force Ruto to remove all of that. In Ghana, we have too many of that, and nobody has gone on the streets. E-levy came up, for example. People just stopped a little demonstration here and there. The government didn't exactly listen. It ended there. Their finance bill, which goes far deeper than an e-levy sort of thing, they have used the street to stop it. Here, the minority went to the Supreme Court over that matter. Purchase of vehicles. They have forced the president to suspend the purchase of vehicles for 12 months. Non-essential travels by state public officials. They forced the president to suspend that. Nobody is going to court over that. They stopped all of that by getting on the streets. The government has reduced the number of advisors in government by 50% by a street march. 47 state corporations with overlapping and duplicate functions are being dissolved by a march on the street. We have more than these. That's my point. So if this would have happened in Ghana, it would have happened already.
Samson, those who ignore history are condemned to repeat its tragedies. I have been around for some time. I remember that these remarks you are making about, oh, if it was going to happen here, it would have happened long ago. They were saying that during the Kalabule era, just before 1979 exploded, and I was in sixth form. I remember the first time Mr. Rawlings showed up on June 4th. One of my teachers who said he knew him very well said, oh, this guy can't run a country for 1 week. Well, he was there for a very long time. I have seen what has happened in West Africa recently, in Guinea and other places, and we have heard echoes of the young soldiers who are staging coups and making revolution speak fondly of Mr. Rawlings. History is cyclical, and complacency is a very dangerous thing. Actually, in 1973, Chile had been an uninterrupted democracy for 100 years, and they were very complacent that their stability was such that nothing would disturb it. That was before Pinochet burst on the scene. We've seen what is happening in ECOWAS. We've seen the Arab Spring, the revolutions. When you look at the American Revolution and the French Revolution and most of it, the underlying motives are economic discontent. And in Ghana, we have despair and desperation. I remember Archbishop Duncan Williams a couple of years ago saying, anger on the streets, and if it explodes, it will be very difficult to deal with it. The conduct of our public officials seems to be daring the streets to explode. And I fear that when it does explode, it will be too late to do anything about it. I am glad that Afenyo Markin made the remarks he made, but he needs to go beyond that. Parliament needs to start doing some accountability. We live in a country where our powers that be have allowed the destruction of our environment and the pollution of our rivers. South Africa has a lot of minerals, but it has not allowed its waters and others to be destroyed the way it is being destroyed. We are a secular state, and the government commits millions of our money to building a cathedral that has become a hole in the ground. Actually, in 2020, before the choice of speaker, there were members of the armed forces in the presence of Parliament. Since then, nobody has said anything about that. There was the Tesman 8 who were shot in cold blood during an election. There was the case of Santrofie, Apafululubi, and Lipik, who were disenfranchised, and nobody said thing. Imagine if this had happened in Bantama. So there are a lot of grievances that we are ignoring. And I urge the majority leader not just to stop at words. We can, for example, start with all those public housing projects going to waste where people have no places to stay. We can stop buying elections because people are buying elections. We saw the appointment of DCs. People paid money for votes. We saw the primaries that we've just seen. This country can't keep going on like that. And sooner or later, there will be an explosion on the streets. I know what you said, that maybe people say, if this was going to happen, it would have happened already. But we said this before. We said that before June 4th. And that is what we got. So we need to start acting to reassure people on the streets, the young men and women, so that they can see hope for them and hope for their future. So they will not be crossing the Sahara and swimming across the Red Sea to die in deserts and perish in the seas, while people arrogantly misuse our resources.
All right. Thank you very much. That was brief and in a manner that I like it because we have very limited time for this very final part of the program. Now, Ricky Hagan, they went on the street and suddenly the president gets to a realization that they can save as much as $1.4 billion. So that's the amount of expenditure cut that has happened on the streets.
Imagine if this had happened before e-levy and other things, maybe the situation would have been different. But thank God. You sit in Parliament and you worry. And you ask yourself, can this go on forever? And you know the answer is no.
Can what go on forever?
The things that are going on in this country, Gracia, you look at loans being approved in Parliament, that is brought in by the executive, and the project that the money is supposed to do, nothing happens.
The parliamentarians in Kenya who passed the finance bill, which the president was forced to reject, not to sign, they have been wearing T-shirts and they've written on them, "I am sorry." One attempted to attend the funeral of one of the guys who was killed. I'm sure he's regretted it.
And not only on that, you know, recent issue to do with a minister of state, a cabinet minister, using his company that he claims he's not attached to take state asset or buy state assets cheaply. You talk about words like conflict of interest. And people don't seem to really understand what conflict of interest means. It looks as if we need to spell out a new definition, not a new definition, spell out what conflict of interest is. And people hide behind the laws and say, what has he done wrong? You know, there is an offer and the guy thinks he can do better and he's doing it.
They say he hasn't broken any law.
Any laws. That's what I'm saying. They're hiding behind the law.
The minister is found to keep $1 million in her house. We are told she hasn't broken any law, so no problems.
You know,
that's actually broken law.
And a lot is going on. That is quite troubling. And you feel that this is just a matter of time. And maybe the Kenya situation, it looks like it's become a wake-up call. And if we, the political class, the whole country, Ghana, doesn't set up, corruption has become endemic. People are even...
What should we do?
There's a lot we can do.
Like what?
Well, stop stealing.
You should tell your people.
Well, it's not only politicians.
But who?
The whole country.
Leadership is everything.
Look, we are all doing things that, as I was going to say before you came in, that corruption has become so endemic that when people are in the act of corruption, they don't even see it. They don't even see that what I'm doing anything wrong.
So the alarm bells are justified?
The alarm bells are justified. Long overdue.
Kofi, you think these things will happen in Ghana? Where people, even the notice to demonstrate, and how the police will come out on you. And earlier I mentioned somebody like Oliver. It was E-Levy that he was angry about. He got arrested. He got thrown into the cells for so long. Abused, his rights completely abused. As we sit, he's being prosecuted over that. Don't you think that there's also the fear in people here that you can't get on the streets and do the things that the Kenyan youth did?
That fear, well, I mean, everybody has their level of, fear. So I have been on the street.
I'm asking the wrong person the question.
Exactly. But the point must be made that there is always, that tendency, and depends on the nature or the posture of the government. On that score, Ghana or our governments have actually been one of the better examples. But we should not gloss over the issue that these things can happen here. Rawlings is an example. Nobody knew him till he burst up and took over the whole country. We have been blessed to avoid these things, okay? But again, we need to appreciate that things have changed. We have a whole generation that hasn't experienced what they are calling for military rule. However, we are dealing with a failure of leadership. We can have a whole program and complain. Why I was asking him, he's a politician. What are we going to do? Let me tell you what we can do, okay? The next parliament must elect DCs. The next parliament must cancel the law that allows ministers to be taken out of parliament. That breeds too much corruption. The next parliament must make sure that they do a constitutional review working with the executive. The next parliament must repeal Article 71. And all of you, stop taking ex gratia. Look, we are driving this country to a place where the youth have no option than to come and deal. And I'm addressing you as a politician. You know why I do that? All of us, we talk and talk and talk. I am in no place to change law. When you go to parliament, go there because you want to change law. We will be dealing with the presidents and we will say whatever we have to say. But the action starts in parliament. The failure happens in parliament. We are failing as a country because we are electing the wrong people to parliament. All right? But I've told you a few things you can do. We can elect DCs tomorrow. It will lower things. We can make sure that we strike out Article 71. All of it should be deleted. We can make sure that we start doing some of the constitutional review things that we need to do to move our constitution to a place where you people now start to serve us. We in civil society will continue to scream and shout. But what I'll tell you is this. The warnings should be heeded. However, the people also sounding the warnings, be careful what you pray for. Because some of these things, you think when it bangs, it's going to happen to only the person you don't like.
Are they praying for it? Are they praying for it, or they are just saying these things are the signs? Just watch out.
Both.
They are not praying for it.
Both. I have heard people say, bring on the military. In fact, actually the last election, there were a number of times I had to tell people, you don't know what you're asking for. So look, for me, I'm saying not all of us have to go and change these things.
Okay.
We will push, but the politicians, when you get into parliament, do something for the country.
Okay. I'm sorry, but and Japan. I'm sorry, but we have run out of time. My outfit, as always, is by Kunati Clothing. You can find them at Adenta Shopping Center, Adenta Down. You can get them on 0244 676732. 0244 676732. That is Kunati Clothing. What you wear counts. Call them and they would give you the best of discounts you're looking for. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., join me on the law as I engage Justice Alexander Osei-Tutu, who is coming out with another new book. And we're looking at evolving legal issues and having a very good conversation. You will learn a lot. Thank you very much. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini. Have a good afternoon.